Today we're going to look at something a little bit different. A review of what I affectionately refer to as a lost episode of Star Trek. Star Trek Borg was produced in 1996 by Simon & Schuster, which puts its release about a month before Star Trek First Contact was released. This is actually an interactive movie. It's a point-and-click video game from the 90s era when full-motion video was all the rage, written by Hilary Bader and directed by Star Trek veteran James L. Conway, who directed multiple episodes of TNG, DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise. The movie was filmed on actual Star Trek sets, specifically Voyager sets, and it makes use of actual Star Trek props and costumes. The game features the acting talents of franchise veterans John Delancey as Q and Majel Barrett as the voice of the ship's computer. The story really is centered around Q as the main character for the first time, and John Delancey just chews the scenery.
Why? Because I can.
He is wonderful as Q, and the writing in this episode is fantastic.
The Borg are firing! We're gonna die! And it's your fault.
It feels like a proper extra long episode of one of the shows, because the duration of the film itself is about an hour.
Remember what you said. Better dead than Borg.
So the game works by allowing the player to make decisions at certain points in the film by clicking on items on screen. They could be buttons on a tricorder, a phaser, a computer console, for example. I will say that the gameplay isn't particularly sophisticated by today's standards. If you make the wrong decision, you can die, but Q will always reset you back to just before that moment, so you can try again. There's only one narrative path in the game, leading to only one ending, so the game doesn't allow you to stray too far away from the story for very long before pulling you back to the main plot thread.
I don't think so.
You play as Cadet Cullen Furlong, and the action is seen through your eyes. Characters address the camera directly, as if speaking to you, the game player. The story begins 10 years after the events of Wolf 359. You're stationed aboard the USS Cheyenne, a Galaxy-class starship like the Enterprise D. You'll notice the sets are Voyager sets, and the uniforms aren't correct. They're TNG-era uniforms. Later, Q will send you back in time to Wolf 359, where once again the uniforms will be incorrect. They will be the Voyager-era uniforms, as opposed to the TNG-era uniforms. The reason for this is because there simply weren't enough TNG uniforms left in production by the time the game was produced. But the comm badges are correct for both time periods. Q shows up to give you the opportunity to go back in time and alter history, so you can prevent your father, Ralph Furlong, from being killed when the USS Righteous was destroyed during the battle with the Borg at Wolf 359, as mentioned in the Best of Both Worlds, and as seen on Deep Space Nine's pilot episode Emissary. So when you're sent back in time, you take the place of a security officer on the Righteous named Sprint. Your father, Lieutenant Furlong, is played by Jeff Allen, who played Ensign Sutter in TNG's Imaginary Friend and Gedrin in the Voyager episode Dragon's Teeth. The captain of the Righteous is Captain Andropov, played by Barry Lynch, who played a Romulan defector named Desev in the TNG episode Face of the Enemy. Lieutenant Baraka is played by John Cothran Jr., who played Klingon characters in TNG and DS9 and a Xindi on Enterprise. Ensign Targus is played by Narni MacPhail, who appeared in the Voyager episode Innocence and also had a cameo as an engineer in Star Trek First Contact. Lieutenant Shoreham played Emmy in the DS9 episode Prophet Motive and Tanya in the TNG episode A Matter of Perspective. So you can clearly see that the cast has got their Star Trek credentials, and they all put in excellent performances. Also, the characters are extremely likeable. The writing and dialogue is also well up to the high standard you would expect from any of the Star Trek shows on air at that time. The game makes use of footage from Emissary, specifically the opening battle with the Borg. We learn that this Excelsior-class starship featured in that battle is the USS Righteous. There's also footage from TNG for the Galaxy-class USS Cheyenne seen in the beginning, and also the exterior shots of the USS Excelsior from the Voyager episode Flashback are repurposed as the USS Righteous. I have to say, the redress of the Excelsior bridge set from Flashback is really good, bringing it up to a 24th century standard. The game really feels like a proper high-quality production. and the computer core is a good redress of Voyager's engineering.
The Borg implant's been overriding our systems since you left, but we still don't know what it's doing.
It's rewriting all of our systems to make them compatible with Borg systems.
The production team were very resourceful and clever with their usage of existing Star Trek sets. The story is genuinely compelling with good humour, mostly from Q, some real tension and suspense, especially regarding the threat posed by the Borg, who are genuinely very creepy in this. You even have to be assimilated at one point in the game so that you can learn how to solve a puzzle, and there is also a satisfying conclusion that neatly ties into Star Trek continuity. Besides the uniforms not being correct to the two eras I mentioned, everything else about Star Trek Borg is pitch perfect. It feels like it can fit within canon without any issues. It makes for an interesting addition to Star Trek lore, and you don't have to be a gamer in order to appreciate this either. To me, like I say, it feels like a lost episode of Star Trek Voyager or The Next Generation, but one that you just happen to be able to interact with, adding an extra layer of immersion. I'd love to see this game re-released actually, maybe brought up to modern HD or 4K video quality, assuming the original footage is still available for remastering. The good news is, if you want to watch the story without playing the game, there's plenty of Let's Plays available of this game on YouTube, where you can watch the entire film. If you haven't seen this before, I think it's well worth your time. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.